creating. Okay, I think that means we are live. I'm just going to do some testing. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to the stream. This is a first of several live streams that I will hopefully be doing in the future, where I'm talking to some of my subscribers about Star Trek and about certain things that they like about Star Trek, and to just basically have a general discussion. And my guest on this occasion is Spri. Hello, Spri. Welcome to the stream.
Hello.
And how are you?
I am good. This wonderful morning, and I have my coffee.
Oh, excellent. That's always a good start. So I think the format, the way we're going to structure things with these is I'm going to just start off with asking you what your history is with the franchise, how you got into Star Trek, where it developed, and we'll go on from there.
Well, I really started enjoying Star Trek. I grew up with it because my parents watched Star Trek, and they read the books and everything. So it was almost back then before streaming, it was a weekly thing because, that's when it would come on. And then from there, I always really enjoyed it. And when I became an adult, I always watched it. And Q has always been one of my very favorite characters. So I've followed it, and I've read some of the books, and yeah, Next Generation is definitely my favorite of all the different series.
Oh, smashing. Yeah, I have to share that sentiment. It certainly very early on, it was one of my favourites. I now have very sort of even opinions about the three 90s Star Trek shows. They all sort of they all have their pros and their cons. I towards the later years, I leant towards Deep Space Nine. A little bit more than the Next Gen, mainly because it was on when Next Gen had ended. So, but no, the topic of this stream is obviously, as people can see up there, is Q. Why is Q one of your favourite characters or your favourite character?
Well, I would say one of my favorite characters. It would be hard to narrow down only one favorite character, but Q's always been one of my favorite characters because prior to New Trek, Q always had the funny and the witty, and while he was rude and sarcastic, he always made things comical or outrageous, to the point where it would be comical. And I always, thought that was, really, really funny in all of his episodes that I've seen, mostly in Next Generation. And I've seen a few episodes, a couple of episodes from Voyager and Deep Space Nine that he was in. And I always liked the way he was portrayed as opposed to the way he was portrayed in season 2. I felt that the way he was portrayed in season 2 was not, it was a disservice to his character.
Yeah, for sure. I'm completely with you on that one. Q, as you say, he was. I think he was able to push the envelope a lot more than any other character in Star Trek. Simply because he was, by his nature, omnipotent. There's nothing he couldn't do or couldn't say. And he was that conduit for the things that we were all thinking in the back of our minds.
Yeah.
He was also... I also enjoyed the Q episodes mainly because of the very out there things he would do. There was always something not only special in the narrative sense, but also special in the visual sense. With Q, he was able to do things that you would never thought possible. I can only sort of think right now of one example, which would be the episode True Q, where he, I think it's a young girl called Amanda, and she's she finds out that she is in fact a Q, and Q has to test her. And one of the scenes is where they're playing hide and seek, and she appears on the outside of the hull of the Enterprise while it's at warp. And I thought that, that encapsulates what a Q can do and what a Q's life must be like, because a Q is not bound by any laws of physics or natures of the universe. The Q can do anything that they want. They can be anyone they want. They can, as Q says, his son can knock small planets out of orbit as long as he doesn't hurt anybody. but they are essentially gods of the Star Trek universe, but playful sort of imps with it.
Yeah, I agree. And that exact scene came to mind as you were talking, because that's, very Q-like to be able to, oh, wow, we're out in space now. And the way he snaps his fingers and suddenly, they're in a different place and doing a different thing. And playful is the best word I would use to describe Q. He was playful and sarcastic to the point where his character was very likable, and the actor played him so well. And he really made, especially the episode with Vosh.
Oh, yeah.
That was great. That was very funny. And all of the different things that he would say to Picard and to Vosh, always made it very, very funny.
Oh, absolutely. And the dynamic between him and Picard was just priceless, because here was a stuffy Starfleet captain who, in the very early seasons, was just having none of it with anything ridiculous. He had no time or patience, and it seems to be that one particular character trait of the captains was they had no time for Q whatsoever, or his stupidity. They were much too professional and much too sort of concerned about the things that he would do. Although on some level you'd think they'd be aware that he's just being playful and that he would snap everything back to the way it was supposed to be anyway. They had no time, and Picard was the best one for that, because if he didn't brook children on the bridge of his ship, he wasn't going to brook a childlike god, playful childlike god who messes with him and his crew. And I always thought those two had such a rapport together. They worked so well.
Yeah, I agree. And in the episode All Good Things, I remember Data had said, very much like a master and his beloved pet. And although Picard would get irritated with him, he never, showed any fear or anything, other than just annoyance with Q being there. And in All Good Things, he, realized that Q was kind of helping him along to figure out, what was going on and the problem and how to solve it.
Yeah, he'd always come with something to teach. He'd always want to teach Picard. And that was, it was a mentorship, but that the mentorship of a fun uncle rather than a parent, because he would always mess with him, and in a way that a parent never would. And you know, All Good Things to me was the best finale of any of the series at all. You know, they couldn't repeat that that feeling that you had at the end of All Good Things. It was great sadness. It was sort of very sentimental and a very fitting way to end it, with one final lesson from Q, and him turning and saying, "Yeah, this is the end of the series, but it's not the end of the trial, because the trial never ends."
Yeah, the trial never ends. Mm-hmm.
And this is something that they try to pick up on in season 2. And they must have had the most buttery hands, because they dropped the ball on that one. It really didn't make an awful lot of sense, you know, with Q essentially being a completely different character.
Yeah, that drove me crazy, because they made Q in season 2 of Picard out to be mean, and he had none of his playful part of his character, none of his humorous part. And you know, the other thing is the way they made him out to be, and also said he was dying, which I thought was stupid because he's omnipotent.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. But then, you know, and for parts in the series or the season, for him to like not have his powers and not be able to do certain things, and then somehow try to connect that with the post credit of season 3, where he's not dead, he's still around.
Oh,
thought,
boy.
This doesn't make any sense, you know. And why would he in season 2 act like he's dying when he's not? It didn't make any sense.
I think season 2 was this really odd ball. You see, season 1 didn't feel at all like Star Trek. It felt like Firefly, and it felt like you know, this rogue crew in the middle of, you know, this absolute mess of contrivance. But season 2's just seemed to put that into overdrive, and it was so forced. And it was a case of, oh, you know, Patrick Stewart appeared on, is it the American show, the View, where he went on and asked Whoopi Goldberg, and he says, I'm going to do my Picard voice, I'm sorry. Whoopi, would you mind coming on to Star Trek Picard? This is an official invite. And she says, oh, I'd be overjoyed to come on, and absolutely, no problem. And she was in the beginning and the end, and you knew Q was coming back at that point, because Star Trek Day, you know, Will Wheaton had his entire, you know, had his show and everything, and he announced it on there. Oh, Q's coming back, and he got Whoopi on and everything. And they not only did they mess up Q, they messed up Guinan. Yeah. With the recast in the past and everything, and the not knowing, and the huge mess that season 2 created. But Q ultimately, I think, got the biggest disservice, because he was
absolutely
I put it in my video at the end of the first review that I did for season 2. Wow, I was blown away. I thought, this is more like it. They're showing Picard some respect. They, you know, he's an admiral now, and they say admiral on the bridge and all of that. I'm thinking, yes, that's better. No more moany Picard saying, I'm so old, I need to die. None of that. Nothing. You've got him on the bridge of his starship again. Brilliant. And then in pops Q. And I made this prediction when I saw the season 2 trailer, and and it happened as I thought it would. Q pops in, young Q, digitally de-aged and all of that, and he goes, "Oh, aren't we looking old?" And he becomes old Q, which is great, which is fine. And then the second episode just seemed to throw it all in the bin.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was fine for him to go switch, from young to old Q. I thought that was perfectly appropriate and fine. But yeah, right after that, and the thing is before Picard aired, I was excited to have Q back, and being one of my favorite characters, and I have a Q shirt on today.
Very good.
And gosh, I was so disappointed. So every episode I saw him in, I thought, all right, well, maybe they'll, bring more of his character in. Maybe, give me what I'm wanting out of Q, that playfulness, that sarcastic, but not mean. But they made his character out to be mean and weirdly dying.
Well, yeah, the dying thing, we will get to that, because that is one of the biggest things that did not make sense. Qs don't die; they are immortal, and this was covered very well in Voyager. I think in the episode Death Wish, it was. I thought Death Wish was a superb episode, very well played and very well acted, very well written as well. But Qs don't die. Not of natural causes, not of old age or anything like that. There was no explanation as to what he was dying from or dying of, and there was no explanation as to why. What made this happen? Now, the entirety of season 2, if you go back and watch it, and I've not done this, I have only seen season 2 once, and once was enough. But I may have to go back and watch it again, because I'm it's a form of abuse. It really must be.
It's so painful.
Oh God, I want to try and understand where the writers were coming from with Q, because I'm going to attempt just to lay out the timeline of what happened, and this is going to sound like complete gobbledygook to everyone who's watching, everyone in the chat. Hello guys, I am seeing your comments come up, but we don't want to break conversation here, so I'll read some of them at the end. Here's what the show tells us is going wrong here. Q, Picard and crew die in the explosion caused by Jurati, Queen of Borg. Even though if it was really Jurati, Queen of Borg, it wouldn't have happened in the first place. That's a digression I'm not willing to make. Okay, so Q snaps Picard into another timeline in which Picard is this fascist general, and it was all based on a decision that Picard made years prior. So Picard made this decision, it skewed the timeline into this other time, this complete other universe, and Q's showing him the road not taken, and it's quoted as the road not taken, and that's why I got so excited when he said welcome to the road not taken, because I thought, they're going to reset everything, it's going to be great. No, they're not. They're going to make it worse.
Yeah.
So something in Picard's past, a decision he's made, has created all of this. So they figure out by some wild means that they have to go back in time even further to one of Picard's ancestors, because Q changed the past.
Yeah.
By being Rene Picard's therapist and not and convincing her not to take the mission which started everything off, which started the warp program off and all of that, whatever contrived mess. Oh God, it's so stupid. And
Mm-hmm.
then Picard and crew go back in time to that point, and then I'm lost because I don't know which Q I'm seeing, and I've tried to explain this in my video. So let's see if you can comprehend what I'm saying, because I'm not even sure I can. They go back in time, and we're seeing Q. We're seeing Q as a therapist. We're seeing Q reading a paper, watching over Radio Picard, and we're seeing Q in his get-up, which is this get-up up here, the one where he first appeared. Now, which Q are we looking at? Are we looking at the Q that skewed the timeline, or the Q that's the observer outside of the timeline who's made the change and wants to see what happens? Or do the writers just have no clue?
Oh, I don't think the writers have any clue.
Oh my God.
My opinion, and the way they had, this is a kind of a different topic, but the way they had kind of messed up the whole thing with Guinan. And completely forgot about Times New Arrow. Where the heck did, But I maybe the writers didn't watch Star Trek at all. I don't know. But that fun relationship between Q and Picard that we had talked about, earlier, that we really enjoy, that playfulness, the whole, Data had described it as the relationship as like a master and his pet, his beloved pet. They always had this, fun, playful relationship, and Picard was just annoyed with him, frustrated, irritated, and Q was always just kind of antagonizing him, never just mean. And
well, he hits him. He hits him at some point, doesn't he?
Yeah, I was gonna say Picard actually cussed. Q made him cuss.
Yeah,
and that's not Picard-like.
No,
and that whole dynamic relationship between Q and Picard in season 2 is not what we've come to love and enjoy about their relationship.
Well, he was angry at Picard for being so human that one choice that he made changed everything. One choice that he made, but it was Q that made the change. It was Q that made the change, and he gets mad at Picard to the point where he pardon my French, but it slaps him.
Yeah,
and gives him a bloody nose. When Q's an almighty being, he knows he could pop Picard out of existence, and Picard knows that he can be popped out of existence, but he knows that Q would never do that. Q does not really need to resort to violence. He never has.
Yeah, he never has. He never has. And I forget the name of the episode, but there was an episode where Picard died, and Q took him into a whole different life, as if he had never gotten into that fight.
Tapestry. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, yeah. Tapestry. And it kind of showed him what life would be like had he not made that choice. And, Picard, hated that, but God bless, they could have throughout season 2 done something where it was more like that, the relationship between Picard and Q, not where Q, because in that episode he was never angry, he was never just hateful. Picard was never angry with him. When we see any relationship between characters where there's so much anger and no playfulness or no nothing positive, we don't have that warm feeling toward them at all. And they made Q out to be a villain more than anything.
Yeah,
it was very disappointing.
You see,
very
they also course corrected. Well, I say course corrected. They made it worse, but because they made the first 4 episodes, if I'm not mistaken, they made it that Picard had made a choice, and it was Q that made the change and all of that.
Mhm.
But then they made it about Picard's mother, and they retconned the hell out of that, and it infuriated me immensely. But forget that for a moment. What they did. They then made Q's lesson about Picard's choice that he made in his own life. But, prior to that, with his, letting his mother out. But that wouldn't have changed the entire timeline in the past.
No.
I've gone round in circles with this because it's confusing as hell. Because there's always a small part of me, being a Star Trek fan, and it's probably the same with you, that wants to fix it, that wants it to make sense, because you can go, you know what, I've been an idiot. You have actually, there's structure here, I just didn't see this piece. But there's nothing like that.
There's not.
Q's trying to teach his old friend this lesson about something that happened in his past, but by going further back in time and changing the events of a crucial point. And he, like I said, he shows genuine anger that Picard is capable of becoming this mass genocidal maniac because something that happened hundreds of years before he was born. He was born into something, and that's not Q either. Q has I use Death Wish in terms of Voyager as a good example of the life of a Q. Okay, so the life of a Q, they have lived multiple. Let's see, it's a bit of an oxymoron, but multiple eternities. If you think about an eternity of eternities, they have experienced being every single microbe in the universe, every single atom in the universe. They have experienced being a rock, a telephone, a supernova, a galaxy. They have lived the lives of every single conscious being in the universe and other universes. They have experienced everything that there is to experience. And the whole thing with Quinn in that episode, Q, the Quinn Q Quinn, is that he had done all that. He had done everything, and there was nothing left to say, do, or experience. He'd done it all. And my point with this is that Q, no doubt, has experienced it all as well. Although it's sort of made out that Quinn is Q's elder, in the sense that as Q, have varying sort of ages, but the whole my whole point is, Q would already know, just how many different possibilities there would be with Picard, and how many different people Picard could be based on the circumstances. It being a matter of nature versus nurture. And your life experiences changing your DNA. I mean, there's the whole theory of every generation's DNA is hard coded with all the memories and information of a previous generation. And you go back a few hundred years, their experiences, their traumas, their things that they felt before having children were passed on through the generations, and this is where you get things like phobias and fears from, and all of that. But I'm digressing a little bit. But my point is, he'd be well aware that Picard could be literally anyone, and he's chosen this universe, this version of Picard, to come and visit.
Yeah, and to go all the way back to childhood, that didn't make any sense whatsoever. And
No.
Q usually has something to teach Picard, and there wasn't anything that good in season 2 of like trying to teach him something. There really wasn't. And I didn't like, and I didn't feel that in season 2 there was any reason to go all the way back to childhood. But Q always in Next Generation always had something to teach Picard or show Picard, and they totally missed that mark in season 2. and it did not make any sense with the post-credit scene in season 3.
Right.
It didn't make any sense. You didn't connect it at all. How are you going to connect that? You know, and they in the post-credit scene in season 3, they kind of left it looking like, oh, there's going to be probably a series with Jack, and what are they going to do with that? But yet, you know, it's there's no current plan of having a series and a season, you know, with Jack. And God, I'm kind of afraid of what that would even look like, you know. And would they bring back Q's child?
It's certainly see, it's an interesting concept, isn't it? I think as fans of Star Trek, not New Trek but Star Trek, we want to see these stories. We want to see this potential. But as it's been said so many times on YouTube, with so many different main channels, you know, The Drinker and Dave Cullen, we don't want to see it because it's just going to be more of this dark nihilism. And it's kind of like... and I sort of have to do this on my videos where I try to separate myself in some respects, because I have to say that if say New Trek wasn't a thing and it was brand new Trek, you know, sophisticated Star Trek, it was worth watching and it was well written and all of that, I can guarantee you, if they announced a legacy series, which is what they've done, which I'll get into in a moment, if they announced a legacy series, we'd be so up for that. Absolutely, 100%. Wow, okay, new adventures on a new starship with Picard's son? Yes, please, we'll take some of that. But because of what they've done with Star Trek, they can't be trusted with it.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
I think we've got some open wounds here, and they're not letting them heal. Now, I'm going to ask you in a moment what your general thoughts on season 3 were, but I just wanted to mention season 3 of Star Trek Picard, because this is a hugely divisive season, because it's very kind to a lot of Star Trek fans. It's really kind, and there's a lot of fan service. There's a lot of nostalgic member berries, as people say. I know that Dave Cullen just put not long put a video out saying the idea of that fan service is a bad thing is ridiculous. My point with season 3 is it is a love letter, sort of like from the family of an abusive ex. I felt a bit dirty saying that, but it's kind of like that. You know, you've had this absolute load of tosh coming out of New Trek and all these really ridiculous stories. Discovery, Strange New Worlds, Star Trek Picard season 1 and 2, and then you know the one of the family members of the people responsible for this goes, I actually like Star Trek. Here's my season, and it's this nice cake, but it's been kind of soiled by the memory of what we've had before. So season 3 was really good if you were a fanboy. And you loved seeing the ships and how cool things were. And I admitted on the last stream, I got a little bit carried away and caught up in the whole the whole nostalgia and how cool everything looked and how nice it was to see the familiar faces, the familiar setting, the Enterprise and everything like that. And then I had to stop and think, the story doesn't actually make an awful lot of sense. And then we're getting more. It turns out we're getting more. And yeah, there's a post-credit scene, as you've mentioned, and it's a Q post-credit scene. And Q's suddenly alive again, and everything's hunky-dory. Yeah, he died getting them back home using the last morsel of power that he had as a Q, and sacrificing his life to get them all back to the present, which, to be perfectly honest with you, was completely unnecessary. I thought, why do you need to kill Q? Q is Q. Yeah, okay, the actor's aged, but they've explained that away. Why would they do that? Anyway, I went off on a tangent. Please, season 3. What were your thoughts on season 3, Spri?
Well, first, let me just say the lighting is trash. The lighting is trash.
Don't know what you mean.
In so many years, you would think that the lighting in all of these other series back in the 90s, they were decent, they were good, and you would think that in 2023 we could get the lighting down. Why is the bridge always so dark? Why are the scenes in all of these other venues so dark all the time? You can barely see the color on their uniforms.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. You can't see anything. And every episode that I would watch of season 3 of Picard, that always was one of the first things that would come to my mind is, why is it always so dark? Turn on a light. There's got to be a light switch in there somewhere.
And doesn't it take... Have you seen Game of Thrones?
No.
Right. Well, there's an episode. I won't go into any spoilers or anything like that in case you ever did want to watch it. But stop at a certain point. Don't go through the end of it. Either way, there's an episode in the final season, and I think it's episode 3. You cannot see a damn thing. Okay, it takes place at night, and I know what they were trying to do. We didn't have street lights back then. There was no light of that sort of nature. But it was this huge epic battle, and you couldn't see a damn thing that was going on. You were like this. I can't see what's happening. Did someone just die? And I don't get it. I don't get why there's bad lighting. And now you could say, oh, well, it's the modern way of doing science fiction. We've got all of these wonderful series. The Expanse is quite a dark show. Yes, it is. But it's lit well enough so you can see what's going on.
Yeah.
And I always use this example because it's true. The Orville works. Why? Because you can see what's going on. The ship is very light and bright, and everything's optimistic in terms of its visual style. But no, New Trek, it is switch the lights off. We're trying to conserve power.
Yeah. And I tried to think in my mind and think, well, maybe the captain just liked it that way and wanted it kind of dim or dark throughout the ship. But gosh, it was kind of the same thing in the other seasons as well, but more so in this season. And it just drove me absolutely crazy. Well, I really didn't like that.
They explained that they started with Discovery, didn't they? And Discovery, the USS Discovery was just dark. And you sort of... And they had an opportunity to explain why that was. There's a character, if you remember, called Gabriel Lorca. And he was from a very retconned version of the Mirror Universe. And his eyes... humans in that universe, their eyes hadn't evolved to take in too much light. So if anything was too bright, he'd get migraines and he'd really struggle. So the Discovery was a dark ship. And I thought, oh, that would be a great way to explain it away. But then they just continued it on every other series. It's like Strange New Worlds. The bridge is just all matte black and polished finishes. And if you want to have polished finishes, the lighting would cause a huge problem. So there's a simple answer to that. Don't have polished surfaces. Match them.
Yeah.
Turn on a friggin' light so we can see what's going on.
Yeah, geez. I mean, maybe you do want to kind of show that the whole bridge is kind of dark, but at least shine a light in somebody's face so you can see them,
Yeah.
or see a scene that and see what's going on. Um, it just drove me crazy because you look at scenes in the older series, any of the shows, and even in dark scenes, even if they're out in the wilderness, in the middle of the night, you're at least able to see their face and to see what's going on, and to not always necessarily to see what's going on, but to see everyone's facial reactions, because that is really important to be able to see emotion out of everyone's nonverbals. Yeah. So, and that was done very poorly, very poorly. Um, and there were just certain things too that, but in both season 2 and 3, and I know you asked me about season 3,
No,
but
it's fine. It's fine.
it just makes me think about both seasons in that things didn't make sense. The writers would present something and it just wouldn't make any sense. There would be no connecting of the dots. you know, it wouldn't lead from one thing into another very well, or connect what, the prior story had been. Pick anything.
In season 2, there's a trove there that you can pick from.
Yeah, exactly. So in season 3, I was hyped and excited and I was curious as to see what they were going to do with lore, what they were going to do with Data, because in the trailers, they were presenting lore and Data and Moriarty, and I had read an article somewhere that they were going to bring back some form of the character Tasha Yar. And I was thinking, all right, well, this will be an interesting, mishmash of characters. I wonder what they're going to do with that. And that was, the whole season was nostalgia. And it was, like you had said, a love letter to, everyone that had grown up with Star Trek, that loved to see the ships and the characters and the crew and the Enterprise D and the crew on the Enterprise D and all of those favorite characters. And I thought it was, I was disappointed with why they brought back certain characters like Moriarty. They brought Moriarty back for just a little blip for no good reason. And I mean, it was my opinion that it didn't make any sense.
No.
And I mean, the whole thing with Tasha Yar, it was just a little hologram. That was it. All
it was. It was a member. It was an actual member berry.
yeah. All this hype about some of these certain characters, and some of the characters were only there for just a brief little moment, just to say hello, and that was it. And in some cases, it didn't really make any sense with the plot of the story. And one of the problems I see is that with New Trek is that the entire series or season is one long movie, and I feel like there's, if you break it up, kind of like Strange New Worlds does, where it's episode to episode, story to story, you can have one story that sucks and is just bad. And then you can have another story that the next time around is really good and you can appreciate that. But if you have one long story and parts of it are really bad, you're kind of turned off from the whole thing,
Yes, because that sets up the expectation. I believe something similar to this was covered in the last stream. You are bound by your errors, and you cannot get away from that. You are if you write a story that is 10 episodes long, You have to structure that story. You have to really think about it. It's essentially a novel that you're writing and then turning it into a screenplay. You have to do that, and you have to think about every possible problem that comes up. It's called proofreading. They don't do that. What they'll do is they'll, "Oh, this is a really cool idea. Let's stick with this," and then they write it.
Throw a ship over into.
Yeah. I just want to say hi to Clayton. Clayton is in the chat. Hi to everybody else as well. It's good to have you here. Thank you so much for joining. The issue is when like you say, there's a huge problem if they write something so terrible. They are stuck with it. And in season 3, one of the things that I mentioned in the last stream that I just thought by the end of it, I thought, hang on a minute. Hold the phone. Wait. Where's Laris? Where?
You're just there for a moment. Yeah. I just... She's probably still waiting for him on that planet. Probably. She'll probably pop up in some other series and just to say hello again. I'm still waiting around for you to show up.
And speaking of Laris, we're forgetting that one of the most important offshoots of Laris, the not Laris character, the Romulan Watcher from season 2, that Picard says, "You're not a Romulan, are you? You're a human." And then she just, throughout the entire series, had things that were showing that she was blatantly Romulan. Blatantly. Yeah. I mean, not only is she played by the same actress, and essentially they did nothing with her makeup apart from take her makeup off for the not Laris character. But when she's working on Picard and she's trying to reach him telepathically, she's got the Romulan shaped earpiece, which is, I'm just thinking, come on, that's not on the nose, that's on the ear, and it's so bloody obvious. Yeah. You must think we're stupid. Either that, or you're so stupid you think you're intelligent, and you're not. You're just really stupid. And you know, you've got these group of watchers that are watching over Rene Picard in the past, and she's a watcher, and so's Will Wheaton, and you've got Q. Does Q not know about them?
To me, the whole deal with the Watchers is not Star Trek.
No,
it's something that you would see out of some other, show, but not Star Trek. It wasn't very Star Trek an idea at all.
No, they were an offshoot of the Travelers, weren't they? I think it was explained by Wesley, and they were like officers of the Travelers, or whatever, however you want to sort of categorize them, whatever they were, and they're watching over key moments in history, or key people in history. They're like guardian angels.
Yeah, it reminds me, I was trying to think, I know it reminds me of something. What does it remind me of? It reminds me of Loki. If you've ever seen Marvel, the whole thing with Loki. But it's not very Star Trek to have Watchers. That doesn't make any sense.
No.
So, but in season 3, I was excited to see all of the characters. But I gotta say, I had a lot of disappointment. Aside from the lighting, I did have some disappointment, because I thought the whole idea in the very beginning with Beverly, getting pregnant with Picard's son and then just disappearing for 25 years.
Oh, that was painful to watch.
I was irritated I think the very first episode, I was really irritated because I thought, man, what a terrible plot that they're going to take that, because that's not Beverly like.
No.
It's not Beverly like to just suddenly leave. You know, the way her character had been portrayed, and then now she's kind of different and she just takes off. You know, that wouldn't be something that Beverly would do. And you know, I also felt like the whole story with the Borg, gosh, you've done that already. You've done that multiple times.
Oh, look, it's the Borg again.
Again. And yet there's now suddenly there's two queens of the Borg, essentially. Because you still have Girardi. She's out there somewhere.
She's Girardi of Borg, version 2.
Yeah, now there's another one, and she kind of looks like a overgrown tree.
I honestly think they said, how should we design this, guys? How shall we do the Borg Queen? Yeah, it's been done before, but how shall we do it? And what's our original stamp that we can put on it? And some poor sap in the corner of the writers' room goes, "Have you seen Stranger Things?" and they went, "Oh my god, the visual style on that's amazing. Let's have all the vines coming out the door, and let's make her look like something from that, a mix of zombie, something. What do they call them in Stranger Things? I forget what they call them. But you know, from the Upside Down, and let's just put all these styles. It leads me to one huge point that I tried to make about Star Trek Picard Season 3. And this is why I was so surprised when all these YouTubers said, look, this is really good. It is good. It's got its problems, but it is good. And this is the biggest problem I have with it. Is that they didn't, none of them have said this. It is such a cut and paste of other genres, other films, other TV shows, everything. It's literally like, we'll take that, and push it together.
Yeah, nothing is new.
Exactly.
Everything is either from old Trek that they've just kind of put together into new Trek. The same kind of stories, the same villains, and from other different shows.
Yeah.
You know? And, you know, when Orville was out, I kind of appreciated and liked Orville better than New Trek.
And isn't that telling? I did say that in my videos. I said, isn't it telling that this is better Trek than New Trek? And it's not even Star Trek. Now, you can, with storytelling, and certainly in the Star Trek sense, the Orville is what we want story-wise.
Yep.
And Seth MacFarlane knows this. He knows that. He knows that what we want is story. He sees what's happening to Hollywood, and it's across the board with Hollywood. It's getting ridiculous. Where the big execs of these companies will go, okay, so what do people want? Well, people like this. Yeah. People like that. People like this object. People want to see this character. People want to see, people want to see Hulk and Iron Man go at it because it's cool.
Yeah, because it's cool.
Exactly, because it's cool. No, actually, excuse me, what we want is decent stories, because that's really all we're there for. Now, I liken it to computer games. Computer games, I'm not a gamer, but I do enjoy computer games. A lot of people on my channel will know that. And you could have, to me, there's only, I can really black and white it. I can just say there's two types of games that I play. One to switch off and one to switch on. Okay? That's it. There's two categories of games that I buy. I go, right, okay. I'm going to today I want to play The Last of Us, because I want to feel the story. I want to know the story. The gameplay is actually quite shocking on The Last of Us. It's really clunky and very difficult to control and kind of frustrating at times. But the story is fantastic and it's great, and I love it. And there's a game called Dead Rising where you're in a shopping mall and you just go around hacking zombies to bits in loads of different creative ways, and it's just switch your brain off, man. It's switch your brain off gaming. Now you could have the same thing with visual media, with episodes, with shows and movies. You know why you're going to go and see Mission Impossible, for example. You want to be thrilled. You're looking for a thrill ride, and Tom Cruise does a great thrill ride. That's what he does. It's kind of like his staple. But you can also go to the movies and see a fantastic film with a fantastic story. That's something that is very well structured and very meaningful. And Star Trek has always been there. I said this is the point when, that Clayton and I made on the last stream. It's vital that it has a story. Otherwise, what are we here for? We're not generic sci-fi. We never have been generic sci-fi. And Seth MacFarlane understood that the Orville needed to be well written above anything else.
Yep, and the Orville did things that old Trek was big for. Starting with the original series of Star Trek and introducing things that were going on already in the real world, and introducing different and bringing in different issues and different things that were already going on in the real world, and showing that. And that was actually one of the things that Q he always tried to show something of thinking outside of the box, or thinking outside of, or thinking about what's going on, and not just, like you said, oh, let's do different things because it looks cool. Let's blow this up. Let's have this character do this. There was always something in old Trek about, showing something that was currently going on in the real world. And that was something that Seth MacFarlane understood, and the Orville began to kind of do more of that, rather than in season 1 of the Orville, it was more comical.
Well, the difference is startling. You go back and watch season 1, the difference between 1 and 3 is worlds apart. They are worlds apart.
Yeah, it is. And when I first started watching season 1 of the Orville, I was irritated, but I had to stop, and after I watched the first episode, I had to stop and I had to make myself think about it for a few days and think, all right, it's not Trek. Just take it for what it is. And then it became more like Star Trek than New Trek,
Yeah.
And I really was disappointed. I think Discovery had tried to bring in some of the, real world things that you see, going on, but Discovery did everything so poorly, so poorly. And acting was always way over the top. Space Jesus had to save everything in every situation. And it makes me cringe whenever I see memes, or not necessarily memes, but any sort of article where it shows a picture of her with Janeway, or even Seven, or any of those other female awesome characters, because that's just not Burnham. Burnham to me was never a role model, never a great female role model. And that was something, like I said, that our favorite Star Trek shows and Star Trek characters back many years ago, back in the 90s in the original series, that we always appreciated. There was always a role model. There was always a story to be told that that you could kind of think about and ponder on and appreciate, you know, and that's just not presented in Picard or Discovery. It's just not there.
Well, Michael Burnham, people get offended when you call her a Mary Sue. Now, she is a Mary Sue. And the reason, I mean, there's a few reasons for that. There's a few justifications for that, shall I say. If you think about Voyager, there's a similarity, and it's a stretch, so bear with me. It's a similarity between Janeway and Michael Burnham in the sense that Janeway will often go, you know what, I'm the captain. I'm going to go and solve this problem. I'm going to fly the shuttle and deal with the Omega particles. I'm going to go down to the planet and sort this out. I'm going to go into, in Thor, I believe it was, THAW, not the other Thor. I'm going to go into into the subconscious matrix and deal with the clown. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And it's quite prevalent with a lot of different captains. Janeway, I think, always had a little bit of pride attached to her. A little bit too much pride attached to her, and she would always put herself in those situations. Burnham, though, although there's similarities there, that's where they end. Burnham is... The thing is, with Janeway, she never had to question her trust in her crew's ability to do their job. And Burnham is kind of like, if you remember the episode Nightingale with Harry Kim, where he just can't let go. He has to micromanage everybody because he's not yet learnt that you have to trust in other people's abilities. Burnham doesn't do that. Burnham goes, well, I'm a first-rate pilot. I'm leader of my class. I'm a neurobiologist. I'm a space biologist. I'm Space Jesus, and I can do everything.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah, she's the saviour of every damn episode. I don't think... And everyone else is just falling over themselves to sacrifice themselves for her, to blow themselves up, to applaud her and cheer her like she's some kind of messiah. You know, she's not the messiah. She's a very naughty boy. She is my number one hated character. And I did actually on one of my previous on one of my reviews, I got called a racist, and the reason for that was because I said I don't like the character of Michael Burnham. But it's not got anything to do with the fact that she's the first black lead of a Star Trek show or anything like that. It's the fact that she's been written so damn appallingly.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to say, but
written very poorly.
Picard,
and the stories were written very poorly.
Absolutely, of course, and Picard was he was my favourite captain. He was, you couldn't, I always loved Picard because he was so diplomatic and so brilliant, and everything he did was calm. And as the years got on and I matured slightly, I actually, believe it or not, Sisko is my favourite captain. And it's not any sort of detriment to Picard, but there's something about Sisko. I can't put my... He's a no-nonsense guy. And one thing I will always remember, and just circling back a little bit to Q, there's one episode that I will always remember and always love about Deep Space Nine, is when he just hits Q. He says, look, I've got no time for you. Bang! And... And Q rightly says, you just hit me. Picard never hit me. And he just turns around and goes, I'm not Picard. And I always respected that. And I like that Sisko is for me, he's slightly, I do prefer him slightly over Picard. And that may have something to do with what they've done with Picard in the last 3 seasons. But just I went off on a bit of a tangent then, as I usually do. But going back to Burnham Burnham, there's nothing entertaining about seeing a character that never has any trials, never has any struggles, and never ever has any consequences. She mutinied. She assaulted her captain. She started a war, and somehow, by the end of the season, she's regained her commission. And I'm sorry, but this is a trope of New Trek through and through. They have absolutely no concept or of the idea of a traitor, like a true traitor. Okay, you've betrayed Starfleet, you've betrayed your uniform, you will never be trusted again. There are no second chances. And this is where, again, with season 3, I had a problem with Ro. I've seen Ro mentioned in the comments. I had this problem with Ro because she had some trouble within Starfleet, and she was incarcerated, I believe, and then she had some real problems, and Picard took her on as a sort of as a mentor. He mentored her, and then she betrayed her uniform.
Yeah.
Yet somehow she was allowed back into, and brace yourself, everybody, because it's true. She was allowed back into Starfleet intelligence as a security operative, as a person of position and power. Ro is a traitor. Burnham is a traitor, and Burnham caused countless deaths. Yet she was allowed back into Starfleet. Why? Because she's the main character. And that's not a struggle, that's not a hardship. That is a stupid decision that she made. An absolutely abysmal decision that she made. But she got away with it. Why? Because she's Michael Burnham.
Yeah. That character was written so poorly, and the stories with the character was written very poorly. And I think that if the writing around Michael Burnham had been better, we would have appreciated we would have appreciated Michael Burnham a lot more. And especially if, as a captain, generally speaking, as a captain, you're not supposed to go off and save every mission, every episode. As a captain, you're supposed to be able to put that responsibility as far as like away teams, or to go over and do whatever on other members of the crew. It's not always your individual responsibility and to take that on. And because that character never did that, or was never allowed to do that, we barely knew anybody's name.
Oh, I still couldn't tell you.
We barely knew anyone's name, and had that character been written where, okay, you go and number one, God, I drove me crazy when number one was always referred to as number one. You're my number one. Commander, yet there were many commanders, go off and go on this away team and, go save people on this ship or on this planet, or go do this. But the writing was always centered around her having to do everything. And, the whole season between her and her mother, the entire season was about that relationship. What about the rest of the crew? Bring the rest of the crew in for part of the story, part of the plot. And
so you see, the thing is, what they don't seem to understand, the writers of New Trek, these wunderkins, apparently, is the structure of the cast of Star Trek. Now, you could say Patrick Stewart was the lead of The Next Generation. You could say Avery Brooks was the lead of Deep Space Nine. You could say Janeway was the lead of Voyager until 7 of 9 came in. The point is, they were the lead. cast member. And they were the captain of the ship. But they were not the main character. They were never the main character because the nature of the story and the storytelling and how it worked is that your supporting characters would get their own episodes, where the captain would barely appear. And it wasn't about the captain. Now, I remember before Discovery came out, there was a slew of marketing saying it's the first black female-led show. She's going to be it's not going to focus on the captain. It's going to focus on the first officer. Well, what Star Trek series focused every single episode on its captain? None of them.
Yeah, very true. None of them. Very, very true.
And Discovery made that fatal mistake. Oh, we'll make it all about this one Mary Sue character who can do everything because she's totally awesome. She's amazing. Yeah, but that's boring. That's boring. You know, there was a show on Amazon called Jack Reacher. It's based on a book. It had some terrible films. But my wife and I watched Jack Reacher. And I can tell you now, it wasn't about Jack Reacher. Yeah, he was the main character, but you had all these different characters, these supporting characters, and you had history and well-structured stories around them. They had their limelight. They had their parts to play. And yes, there was a main character, but the supporting cast and the supporting characters were as much a part of it as anything else. The guys on Discovery, I feel sorry for any character there, any actor, including Doug Jones's Saru, because aside from that one character, you're never gonna know the names. They're never gonna get any screen time.
Yeah, that's true. And you made me think of the relationship between Q and Guinan. They know each other.
Yeah.
They know each other.
Yeah,
and do. I think in season 2 it would have been beneficial to show something about their history and how they know each other. I think that would have been a really good plot to have that and to show what their background was and to maybe tie that in to a better plot for one. But there's a lot of things about the Star Trek series from the 90s and before that, we appreciate that. Maybe they didn't watch all of the episodes. Maybe they didn't watch,
Well, they cherry-picked, didn't they, at the end of the day?
Yeah,
they cherry-picked.
They did. And there were a lot of things about the show the movie Voyager that they brought in, and which was nice, but you gotta have, it's like you were saying, you need a good story. You need a good plot.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a good plot and a good story, you're lacking.
Well, I mean, you can have a good story, you can have a good plot, but you cannot go retconning things. Do not retcon. It's the worst thing you can do to a franchise. When you're trying to say, well, actually, this didn't happen because we've written this actually happened. And what do you think happened never happened. And that's the whole Times Arrow argument. They basically nullified that, but because they went to a past of a future that hadn't happened, and they tried to explain away, but the thing with Q and Guinan in season 2, Guinan was a massive retcon anyway. They retconned a bunch of Guinan's abilities. It was quite frankly sickening as a Star Trek fan to see what they did with Guinan, and to make her an apparition. With the Picard and Jay Carnes, he having this interrogation and her just appearing as an apparition. It was terrible. But there was one thing: the summoning of the Q with the magic genie bottle. So I say it that way, it sounds so ridiculous, but that was what it was. And it involves her opening a bottle, chanting and screaming, which again is not Star Trek. You know,
No,
genies are not like, they don't work like that.
it's
But
not
if
hocus pocus.
my understanding when it came to getting a Q's attention is if you knew Q, he would always answer. If you didn't know Q, he'd probably go, well, someone's just pissing about for the same reason. You don't, some guy in the backyard doesn't put a big sign out saying, come and have a cup of tea, aliens, because, I'm open-minded. They don't know you, they're not going to do that if they do exist. My point is, if you knew Q, all you had to do is say, Q?
Yeah, exactly.
I want to talk.
That's what Picard did in All Good Things.
Yeah.
He said, Q, where are
Q,
you?
damn it! Because he knew. So Guinan, that someone who Q reviles. Mm-hmm. If Guinan says, Q, I want to talk, and I want to talk now, Q would come. You wouldn't need to invoke him with a bloody genie bottle. Oh, God.
Yeah, and Guinan, I was excited prior, to watching season 2 and knowing that Guinan was going to come back. I was so excited because Guinan is also one of my very favorite characters. And gosh, she was only there in the beginning and the end. She wasn't there in the middle, and she wasn't a part of the plot. And she wasn't really, I guess, okay. The new actor of Guinan was there, but she wasn't Guinan. She wasn't the actor we all love. She wasn't the character either. The way they wrote the character is like you were describing, this magic genie bottle of trying to call Q and some of these other things. And the lighting in the bar was stupid and ridiculous yet again. It's you didn't really get a sense, you didn't really get Guinan. Maybe you had this, character throughout the middle episodes, but it didn't feel like Guinan. It felt like somebody new.
Well, if you talking about Time's Arrow for a second, if you're going backwards to a time when Guinan was 300-400 years younger, but she was, Elorians don't age, she was still Whoopi Goldberg and everything. The character was still quite the philosopher, and she was very calm, and she was there as an observer to humans, and she was speaking to Mark Twain. Samuel Clemens. She was talking to Samuel Clemens in a very sort of, think about it this way, a very wise sort of older, beyond her years kind of character, and that was 200 years before when they went back to 2024. And Guinan's this hard ass with a shotgun behind the bar saying, basically just talking shit all the time. Pardon my French. Talking.
Yeah. And
I didn't get it. It was so far removed from even that portrayal of her character, in the 1800s. It's like she devolved and then evolved again.
Mm-hmm. And, in Next Generation, there were a couple of episodes where Guinan would show how much of a badass she was, but she was always, she was always calm. She was always very wise. And that's what you love about her. That's what I always loved about her. She was always very wise. She was always very calm. And she would always make you think, and make you ponder things. And then the new character of Guinan didn't do that. It was very surface level, and a lot of the writing with that character, with Picard in general, the series and Discovery, everything is very surface level, and let's do this one thing because it will look cool, or because it'll sound kind of cool. Why? Where's the reasoning in that? And is that, if you do that, is that really the same character? Is that really the same concept, and don't tell the same story over and over and over again. We've seen enough Borg,
God, we really
and if you
have.
want to introduce an old villain, go back and watch other, shows, other episodes, there's a lot of other villains that you could pick, and would make a great series.
Well, yeah. I mean, I mentioned.
Or maybe take Q and write Q out to be better, write Q out to be actual Q.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing with season 2 is, and season 2 and to some degree season 3. Okay, massively missed opportunities to write something pretty decent. Okay, so you've got the big bad, the unknown big bad at the end of season 2, something that Queen Jurati of Borg is trying to stop. Okay, so that's why she took control of the ships instead of just going, revealing herself and saving everyone a lot of panic and trouble and the self-destruct of the ship, which caused the entirety of season 2 to happen in the first place. Why didn't she just introduce herself and say, hello, I'm Jurati of Borg. By the way, something's going to go terribly wrong here, and there's this species from another galaxy that are trying to come through a vortex. We're going to guard it, but we need to seal it, and stop it from destroying the galaxy or whatever stupid nonsense they came up with. You had an opportunity there with season 3 to go, if you wanted to include the Borg, you could say the Borg, Jurati's Borg's been decimated, guarding this entrance to this wormhole to another galaxy or whatever it is, and that's how you lead off the back of Picard season 2. You say, you get Picard's got word of something has destroyed Jurati's Borg, and Jurati's gone. Thankfully, she was gone.
There's no connecting of the dots.
No, and instead of the big bad being the Borg, which, to be fair, the Borg have been so watered down over time that they are not a threat anymore. There's nothing menacing about the Borg. They only look menacing in their visual style. There's nothing remotely sort of scary about the Borg, and I think that's much in the same way as when a series starts out, you have this big enemy, and slowly the good guys level up to the point where they can beat them, and they don't become such a problem anymore. And I think that's happened to the Borg. But have it so the Borg have been destroyed by some force outside of the galaxy that's going to come through this big vortex that they left from season 2. Mm-hmm. And have the next generation crew have to get back together very early on to try and match this threat. And the only reason I'm saying this is because that was going to be my theoretical series for Picard season 1. I was doing a rewrite. It was really short-sighted of me because I can't write, but and that's good. That creates a big problem. But that's what I came out with. That's the beginning chapter of what would have been my Picard season 1. Is there's a big threat, and there's a starship that's witnessed this, and again, this is how season 2 opened up with this rift forming, and it was uncanny because I wrote this in the middle of Picard season 1. There's this rift that opened up, and one of Picard's friends from the last 20 years that we haven't seen, he became good friends with someone. I believe I've written him as a commander, so his new first officer. And he'd got his own starship and done pretty much what Riker had done, and he'd witnessed this rift open in space, and his ship got absolutely pounded by what came through. It was all left ambiguous. I didn't go into any detail. He hightails it back to Earth. And the reason he has to go to Earth is because he needs to speak to Jean-Luc face to face, because he can't trust staff, any of the subspace channels or anything like that. He has to do it secure. So he bolts his ship back. He makes it to the outer rim of the solar system, and then the ship just blows up, and he doesn't make it to Picard. And I've written it. I genuinely, I'd written this entire first chapter where he has this conversation, and he says, I can't discuss it over subspace, I need to meet you in person. Picard waits for him. There's no sign of the ship. He goes to Starfleet and says, what's going on? The ship, and they say the ship never made it back. The ship's been destroyed. And that was going to be the first chapter. And the reason I'm talking about this is because that there, with this wormhole that they had in season 2, would have been such a great leaping point into season 3. And you could still have the member berries, you could still have, all of that, and you could still undo a lot of Picard season 2.
Mm-hmm.
And it could have all, but at the end, would have been a little bit too easy, but it could have all been at the end part of Q's grand lesson for Picard. One final lesson.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And with Q's final lesson, and before season 2 came out, I went back and I rewatched All Good Things a few times, and I went back and I rewatched a few other episodes and some episodes in Deep Space Nine to try to, in my mind, figure out what cool thing, because obviously to me, what they were going to do with Q in season 2 was carry on the trial that never ends. He's a danger. We are a dangerous. What was it? Dangerous savage race.
Child race.
And or species rather, and there was none of that. I was expecting the trial that never ends and for the trial to continue, and it wasn't. There wasn't really a good lesson for him to teach. It wasn't very substantial, and it was a major disappointment. It was a major disappointment. And I agree that they could have somehow connected the wormhole and explained something. And, I think there were a lot of dots that just weren't connected. That, like you were saying, missed opportunity. Well, at least explain something. At least tell me why. Tell me why this happened or why you changed that. Give it some explanation. Why is Q dying? Do you know when you're a parent, so you'll know this one. When you're trying to explain something to your child, and they're getting clever. They're getting clever and clever, and their responses are getting quite intelligent, maybe a little bit more intelligent than you, and they outwit you, and you've got nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. They've won, and you are like, but, and you go, but you're not getting my point. This is my point, and you'll shut up and do as you're told. Get on with it. And season 2 felt like that. It felt like it was the parent that got outwitted by the child. And, poor analogy, really, calling us all children, but they're trying to be these grown-ups. They're trying to tell us or incite some, tell us some wonderful lesson of humanity. But they ended up giving us no lesson whatsoever. We called them out on it, and then they went, be quiet. That's how it felt to me. We pointed out all these flaws in their perfect writing, and they ended up with nowhere to go. And they screwed themselves, and they screwed a great character. He's such a good character. You're able to do literally anything with him because he's omnipotent. Yeah. Exactly. You're literally able to do anything. And that's what we were given. And it didn't, like, going back to what I was saying about connecting the dots, it didn't connect the dots from his character in season 2 to the post-credit scene with Jack, and suddenly he's not dead. And suddenly, he's telling Jack, oh, the trial is over for Picard, but it's not over for you. For you, it's just begun. And that's teasing into maybe a whole series around Jack that they currently don't even have planned.
Well, they were
It's
on
just
about
left
rebooting the
open-ended.
next. Sorry, they were on about rebooting the Next Generation, weren't they, for a while? So maybe they'll do a soft reboot with Jack and the crew.
You know,
But you know what that means? That means more Raffi. So be careful.
I wish there's just so many different characters that there's some characters they've written well and some characters that they just have not written well. And I really wanted to there are things about Raffi that I understand and I get, I don't like that they made her an addict, but I can understand given her past, that she has dealt with that and has, that's part of her character. I wish though that they had made her not so impulsive. She's very reacted and very impulsive, and I wish that they had given her a little more that character a little more response, responding to situations and responding to people, and not always so, oh man, I'm emotional and I've got to do this and I'm so emotional about X, Y, and Z. But, especially given that she had this relationship with Eleanor, to show Eleanor to display more of a role model. We want to be able to see more of a role model out of her. And it also makes me think of Seven. And I just got to say, one thing out of season 3 I did like and appreciate was at the very end scene with Seven, and she's captain and she's sitting in the captain's chair.
Yeah, I know where you're going.
This anticipated, what are you going to say to make us go? And it was drawn up, and it was like seconds and seconds and seconds.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of wondering, please don't screw this up,
yeah.
writers. Please, writers, don't mess this up, because there's certain things that captains say that are good, and then there's other things that captains have said that are dumb.
Yep.
The whole "let's fly."
Oh, let's fly! No, please, no.
Especially with the whole thing with "let's fly." Well, if you're in a big rush and you're trying to get somewhere, and it's you're in an intense, scary situation, she's not going to say "let's fly."
Yeah.
But I really liked that when they put Seven in that situation, that they cut that off.
Oh yeah.
They didn't let you have it. And I did like that.
It was kind of like the middle finger to that aspect of New Trek. I really enjoyed it because it was like, we don't need... All the other series have said, oh, the captain says something really cool to get the ship moving. We've all got... And what really frustrated me is Strange New Worlds did this with the recent trailer. But they're trying to get Spock to say something, and he says, "I wish to make the ship move."
Yeah,
and
I didn't like.
It's just no. It like I say, it's going to feed my channel for 10 episodes. That's all it's going to do for me. It's going to make me make YouTube videos, and I might go back to my old style where I just go freaking ridiculous with it, because it's not serious Star Trek. My point being, that was, I agree with you, that was absolutely perfect. Where they just went, and she's about to say it, she just goes, and it's cut, and the ship goes to war.
Yep.
Absolutely fantastic. Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing with 7 of 9 that I really disagree with, and I don't know whether it's justified or not, that's not 7 of 9. It's not 7 of 9. It can't be 7 of 9. You look at Seven of Nine in Voyager, and you look at this Seven of Nine. They are light years apart. They're black and white. You know, it's Seven. It's hard to describe, but she was quite analytical and quite Vulcan. She was quite Borg throughout Voyager, and yeah, she did evolve, but it was a massive leap from Voyager to the Seven we met in season 1 of Picard. You know, Seven of Nine would always speak properly, and now she's suddenly like, "Hey, Picard, are you gonna, what are you gonna do? Save the day?" That's not Seven of Nine. Okay, yes, she wouldn't remain that for forever. She would develop her own personality, but it felt too far apart from what we knew, and that's the same with other characters.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. I think that they could have done that. They could have kept her a little bit more Seven of Nine, but you know, I do like her character, and you know, in my mind, I do attribute it to, it's been several years. It's been many, many, many years. Yeah. And, you know, after 20 years, you know, of course, she's evolved. She's different. She's become more human as the years have progressed, you know. And I think that the relationship between her and Raffi could have been written a little better, because if they had written Raffi's character a little better, you know, that's how I feel. I think that they could have written Raffi better, and then that would have made the relationship between them better as well.
Raffi, like you say, Raffi was reactive. She was always so reactive
and impulsive.
And it there's the big warning, big alarm bells went off in season 1 where it's the flashback and she's sitting with Picard, and Picard saying, you know, I offered my resignation and well, they accepted it, and that was it. Oh, they accepted it. Okay, so we've got to do it without Starfleet. We've got to go and save the Romulans without Starfleet. We must go and save the Romulans. We can do this, Jean-Luc. We don't need Starfleet. Let's go and save everybody. Let's do it, you and me. We're a team. Blah, 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 blah. And then she looks at a pad and goes, I've been fired. Screw you. And then walks away. And storms off. And that felt so jarring. I thought, hang on a minute. Yeah, what have I just seen? Have I skipped a few pages of dialogue here? Because there's no logical progression from there to there. It's kind of like someone with bipolar syndrome who you're having a perfectly nice cup of tea with, and then suddenly they'll swear at you, throw the tea over your face, and leave. It made no sense to me. So yeah, she's very reactive. She's very quick to berate Picard. And she's I think she's not a likable person at all. But in season 3, they actually, hats off to them, they really did try and fix her.
Yeah, they did. And I really liked that they tried to write that character better. And they did write that character a little bit better. She was still reactive and impulsive. Yeah. But it was a lot better. Yeah. A lot better. And to be honest, I would have liked to have seen more of the relationship and dynamic between her and Seven as well. But I don't know, the writers chose not to do that.
There's a lot the writers chose not to do.
Right? And the whole thing with the Borg and all the red, the Borg isn't red, the Borg is green. And maybe they chose red to not give it away so quickly, but
it would have been on the nose to do it green. It really would. But at the same time, you know, people thought
pick
it was
a different villain.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you want to make it, it's like, I think I touched on this in the last stream. You want the founders would be subservient to no one. They would be pawns to no one. They would not. I'm sorry, but the founders Okay, yeah, the changelings aren't founders. I do apologise. Don't put it in the comments or anything like that. I apologise. They weren't the founders. They were an offshoot shapeshifter race. Okay, that hated the Federation. They would not be subservient to the Borg or be tools for the Borg. They wouldn't. The Borg are in such a weakened state, and the Queen's in such a weakened state. The shapeshifters don't need the Borg to destroy the Federation.
You know what would have been, if they wanted to bring in an old villain that would spread throughout the entire Starfleet, they should have brought back, I forget what season it was from Star Trek Next Generation, but they should have brought back the creatures that lived inside of the of each individual. They should have brought that back.
Yep. Again, you're not alone with this theory, or with this preference that they should have done that. It would have been again much in the same way Picard season 1 is an offshoot or no, forget that. Think about Enterprise. Think about the final episode of Enterprise if you've seen it. They created an episode off of the Pegasus. Okay, and they tried to tie it in and it wouldn't work. It didn't work. But they could have done an entire season's worth with one episode from the Next Generation, as you say, the bug episode. They could have done that if they were intelligent enough to have done that, but they didn't. And I get why they didn't, but at the same time, with such an underwhelming bad guy, 10 episodes to build it up to half an hour of reveal of who it is. Okay, well, thanks for that. It's the Borg again. And, they've been destroyed several times and been obliterated by Janeway, and now they're back, and they're back again, but they're not as strong, but they use the shapeshifters to their ultimate goal and already on board. And that, again, all of these things that we're raising as Star Trek fans, I cannot understand other YouTubers. I just don't get it, how they can say it's good writing, unless they are absolutely blown away with the fan service, which again, I would be singing its praises, Spri, if it was any good to begin with. If the writing was great and the story was great and it was a satisfying ending, you could say I loved the member berries because they complemented it. They didn't rely on it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, of complimenting rather than relying on it. And I really loved in season 3 seeing, the old characters in the ship, but I ended up being very disappointed with a lot of the choices that the writers made with, the portrayal of certain characters and certain things that they did within the whole season. And within all of Picard, honestly, and if we go back to Q, with everything they did with Q. And when I saw the post-credit scene, I thought I had this mix of emotions of, oh, yes, I love Q, bring back Q. But then I also thought, oh, they're just going to ruin him. And with Q, what they really should, there's so many stories that they could bring about with Q. Bring back The Trial Never Ends, and make that, interesting, or bring back the story with Amanda, or bring back, his child, or bring back, I don't know, Vosh, bring back or create a whole new story. What about the war? All these different things that they could have done with Q, or anything really. There's a lot of different there's a lot of different old villains that they could have brought back and used, um, and it would have been a lot better, I think.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. That you look at the slew of villains,
Yeah.
bad guys, even the anti-heroes that you could have brought back. You
Mhm.
mentioned before Moriarty. Okay, so
Yeah.
Moriarty, I thought was a great 2 episode villain. All right, it's spread across 2 completely quite distant seasons. I thought Moriarty was it was ingenious. It was the Moriarty was a creation of a misspoken word to artificial intelligence, to a computer. He was created because Geordie LaForge says, "Can you? I want you to create an adversary capable of defeating Data, not capable
Mhm.
of defeating Sherlock Holmes." So the computer interpreted that as it would believably do, as well. Actually, I am going to create someone who can beat Data. I'm going to create the best thing I can to defeat Data. And that's what the computer did, and that's how Moriarty was born. And then the fantastic, I thought it was a great episode, Ship in a Bottle. Fantastic, and a great
Oh
concept,
yeah.
and a great way to have the bad guy win, but ultimately not win.
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
I mean, there was questions as if you go into true nerd or geekdom in terms of Star Trek, you'd know that Data's quarters, I think, were in the Star Drive section, and or Reg's quarters, I beg your pardon, were in the Star Drive section, and that blew up in Generations, so no more Moriarty. But it stands to reason that Starfleet or Section 31 would have said, okay, so we need to put Moriarty somewhere safe in the archives. And that's fine.
Hmm.
But the use of Moriarty in season 3 was a fleeting moment and completely
Yeah.
pointless because it wasn't actually Moriarty. It,
Yeah, I agree. There were so many things that they teased in the
excuse me.
trailers. Bless you.
Thank you.
There were so many things that they teased in the trailers, but they only teased them to get you to watch it for the
Yes.
nostalgia because there was no story around them.
No. No, they were there to be there. It's the
Yeah.
archives of Section 31. You had the attack tribble. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks for that. You had a Genesis device, not the one, but a Genesis device. It's like that's violating so many laws. You really and they have seem to have this ultimate attraction, shall I say, without being crude, to Section 31. And Section
Hmm.
31. I'm so done with Section 31. It was an intriguing possibility in Deep Space Nine. So intriguing, but they've again watered it down. And you got Michelle Yeoh having the Section 31 movie now. Apparently, I don't care. I genuinely don't, because Section
Yeah.
31 is it's superfluous. It served its purpose to a degree, and it was an interesting concept, but Discovery ruined Section 31. Just
Yeah.
ruined it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they've ruined
Oh,
it
and
so
the
many
whole
other
thing with
things.
10C was just ridiculous.
Someone mentioned that in the comments. 10C. Oh no, 10C was terrible. Unnamed species 10C. I laughed so hard when they came up with that definition. Unknown species 10C. It's absolute crazy. Absolutely
Hmm.
crazy. Um, so, I'm just going to spend, if you've got 5 minutes, Spree. I know
Hmm.
that you've got to go fairly soon. If you've got a few minutes, I just want to go through some of the comments that have been left in the stream. It's a lot of people having a conversation, so I'll try to paraphrase very quickly. Setlick 3 Gaming I love it when he describes it this way. Picard Season 3 is the best of the worst scum. I mean, that's fair enough. Clayton, a good friend of the channel, says needless makeup and set design, clean set design if everything is dark. Yeah, it's pretty much the way it is. And we have Setlick 3 actually left, saying must go to work. There is an emergency. And he did Vulcan sign, which I can't do with my left hand. Too bad Jack wasn't the son of the Candle Ghost. I absolutely love it.
Yeah,
that's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Let's see. Let's check out Spock versus Q on YouTube. I will check that out. Might be worth a look.
That'd be interesting.
Moriarty.
And there was a book written called Q and Law, between Q and another one of my favorite characters, Loaxana, Troy.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
You should check that out.
I will. I've got a Q book around somewhere. I cannot remember what it's called, but I think it's a graphic novel. I shall have a look at that. Clayton again. Moriarty would have been a better villain to represent the dangers of AI in season 1. That's a fairly good point there. I like that one.
Yeah.
Not sure if that was an attack tribble or just a regular tribble reacting to a Klingon. Fair enough. Section 31, a secret, so secret everyone knows about it. So that's just I
wish that they had. I wish that they had written Worf better in season 3. I really didn't like that they had him speak the way he spoke. It wasn't Worf.
He was Worf light, I think. Very much Worf light. So I think that's going to bring us to the end of this stream anyway. Spri has to go, and to be quite honest with you, I need another cup of tea because I'm very British, don't you know? So it's been an absolute blast having you on, Spri. It's been so wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we must do this again. Absolutely must do this again. I will be doing other live streams with other subscribers, but you have to understand, guys, anyone who's watching, time is quite precious these days. I don't have an awful lot of it, so I will, if you are patient with me, then I will see what I can do and get you on the channels. Thank you so much for everybody for your support. Thank you, Spri, for your support over the past couple of years. It's been great having you as a subscriber, and here's to many more years.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you, guys, in the chat. Thank you, like a true English gentleman, sorry. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. This has been a wonderful stream. Until the next one, you look after yourselves, you look after one another. Take care, everybody.